Hey there. If you're enjoying the show, please leave us a rating and review on whatever podcast app you're using. It would really help spread the word about the show. Thanks and happy spelling.
Welcome to Dispel Magic, the podcast where we overthink the impact of magic on the worlds of D&D. I'm Benjamin, game designer and writer.
And my name's Dane. I'm a dungeon master, podcaster, and voice actor. And Benjamin, you've picked quite the spell for us to discuss this episode.
Yeah, so when I was looking for spells for this episode, this was not the first one I started with, actually. I looked at quite a few. And actually, I looked at this old list of spells I had written when I first thought of the podcast. And I was going down it, and I actually hadn't even written this spell on it.
Well, because it's boring and nobody picks it.
Yeah, I mean, I love it because I remember it from AD&D. And I remember picking it a lot when I was a kid, because I think probably because I thought it was funny.
What is the spell?
So the spell is Magic Mouth.
Magic Mouth. Hey, a classic.
Probably the most salacious name you could give a spell, but it doesn't do anything. A lot of connotations. Yeah, it doesn't do anything salacious.
No. I mean, not yet.
Well, right. I guess you could have it.
Let's find out. Let's see what rabbit mouths we go down.
Yeah. So Dane, why don't you tell us about Magic Mouth?
Sure. Magic Mouth is a second level illusion spell with the ritual tag. It's available to artificers, bards, and wizards. It takes a minute to cast, has a range of 30 feet, and requires, and this is pretty funny to me, 10 gold pieces of honeycomb. Now, is that combined with the jade? Okay, so it needs honeycomb and jade. So is that a combined total of jade and honeycomb? Because 10 gold pieces of honeycomb seems like a lot.
I have to imagine that most of the 10 gold pieces is coming from
the jade, right? Yeah. It consumes these materials and its duration is, quote unquote, until dispelled.
That's very important.
And it's very important.
We're going to be thinking about that a lot later.
Yeah. And you, the listener, can dwell on that for a second, because here's the actual spell is written. You implant a message within an object in range, a message that is uttered when a trigger condition is met. Choose an object that you can see that isn't being worn or carried by another creature. Then speak the message, which must be 25 words or less, though it can be delivered over as long as 10 minutes. Let's bookmark that, because that's wild to me. Finally, determine the circumstances that will trigger the spell to deliver your message. When that circumstance occurs, a magical mouth appears on the object and recites the message in your voice at the same volume you spoke. If the object you chose has a mouth, or something that looks like a mouth, for example, the mouth of a statue, the magical mouth appears there so that the words appear to come from the object's mouth. When you cast the spell, you can have the spell end after it delivers its message, or it can remain and repeat its message whenever the trigger occurs. Forever. Forever isn't in there. Editorializing. The triggering circumstance can be as general or as detailed as you like, though it must be based on visual or audible conditions that occur within 30 feet of the object. For example, you could instruct the mouth to speak when any creature moves within 30 feet of the object, or when a silver bell rings within 30 feet of it. That's, I think one of the reasons that I haven't ever taken this spell is because I've never wanted to read the whole thing.
Yeah, that is a lot of text.
It's impenetrable.
Yeah, that's 3 paragraphs of text
for a second level spell. For a second
level spell, that's like you'll probably cast like one time because you won't really know what to do with it.
It seems like a spell that practical jokers would use,
right?
Or people who are trying to scare folks who are believing ghosts or something, like something like that.
Yeah, leave
a message for someone.
Right. I think that has to be expected use of the spell is that it's basically like a thief does a special knock on a door and the magic mouth appears and recites the message or something, that thief is supposed to get, or
That'd be cool. Yeah.
spy, I guess. I think that's supposed to be what the intended use is, because maybe you could use it to scare people. Another thing about this, the text of it suggests that to me.
Mm-hmm.
There's no...
Well, any creature moves within 30 feet of the object. So like I'm thinking that if you're trying to trick another party that this house is haunted, right, and you put magic mouth all over the house, and then you're spooking them. You're spooking them left and right.
It's a very Scooby-Doo type of scary, though.
That's right. Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, what would you be saying that would be all that scary to them?
Well, I think of the first mission in The Ghosts of Saltmarsh, which is a highly misleading title. Mm-hmm. There are very few ghosts in that campaign. But in the first adventure, you go into a quote unquote haunted house that's got magic mouth.
Well, hold on a sec, Dane. We should probably say spoiler alert, right?
For the first level 1 mission of Ghosts of Saltmarsh. Okay, spoiler alert to everyone. Woo.
Yeah, Ghosts of Saltmarsh spoilers ahead.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, thank God we got that out of the way. Anyway, I don't know if they used magic mouth, but I
think it is in there, actually, because I ran that adventure and I'm pretty sure it is in there.
They put in mechanics for getting the frightened condition from these sounds, so it might have been something else, but that's essentially what it's doing, right?
Yeah, although I have a hard time imagining any DM or most DMs are going to let you roll to frighten people with this spell.
No, of course,
because it doesn't say that, and I think most DMs are pretty strict about following the rule of the spell
as written with the spell. This particular spell, it doesn't say anything about putting a condition on a person.
Right.
So I mean, this is a story spell. This is a spell to add to the plot, to develop characters, to add some spice to your life.
Or so you think.
Or so I assumed.
It seems like a story. And I think it was intended to be primarily like a story device type of thing. A way of passing along information, or maybe startling people, or whatever else. But there are a lot of very strange and unusual uses for this that we're going to get into. On the smallest scale, an immediate use of magic mouth is that. So, okay, let's go back. Anything else? Again, this is a ritual spell.
Yeah.
Doesn't take a spell slot to cast. As long as you've got 10 gold pieces worth of honeycomb and jade, you can cast this spell ad nauseum. With that said, you could mass produce doorbells and alarm systems using magic mouth.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. Like if I'm an enterprising wizard, I can I don't even need to buy. I can walk outside of town, pick up a bunch of pebbles, maybe paint them red or something,
Make it flashy.
Yeah,
really
make it a little,
sell the people on it.
Yeah, make it a little flashy. Cast magic mouth that either says company's here or intruder alert.
Yeah.
And then I sell them to people. And it takes me like 10 gold pieces and 10 minutes to cast. So maybe I sell it for like 20 gold pieces.
Sure. And then a creepy little mouth, just a tiny creepy little mouth shows up on that pebble. Because it says a mouth appears on the object.
Yes. I mean, that's neither here nor there. But
it's a visual that I'm really enjoying right now.
You probably aren't going to sell it to a lot of people at that price point. I mean, the commoners are not going to be shelling out 20 gold pieces for a doorbell, essentially.
A tricky little pebble, but it is red.
Yes. But I think there'd be plenty of wealthy merchants who would I think it could easily be this kind of like an iPhone, basically.
Yeah, a bespoke.
In a D&D, like it's this thing that's cool that you have. System. It means that you're wealthy. It means that you have the income to spend on this kind of
almost frivolous,
at least in the doorbell. With the alarm, like if you're using them as an alarms, that's actually might be a pretty wise investment for merchants. You can put them around your warehouses and at night know if people are coming and going around your
so that's more mundane,
right,
surface level use for magic mouth. Right.
It's small scale stuff. It's the kind of thing where if your party was going to take a break from adventuring for a couple months and your enterprising wizard needed something to do, that's a thing they could do.
Sure.
Okay.
But you specify here, you've written down a couple of notes, and you specify that it's important to remember that A, the spell lasts until it's dispelled, and B, there's no restriction on the number of castings on a single object. So what's your thinking along those lines?
Okay. So this is where we start getting into the larger scale stuff. So the fact that the spell lasts until it's dispelled, or you can choose for it to last until it's dispelled, means that it's functionally forever. Like,
Right.
Unless somebody really hates what you've done, they're probably not going to waste a dispel magic on.
What is that, level 5, level 4? A dispel?
3, I think.
Okay.
I think because I think counterspell is 3rd level, and I think I think counterspell and dispel magic are the same level.
Got it.
Then, so the second point, though, that's the super important point. Like, a lot of the later things we talk about are going to rely on this.
Right.
So when you cast Magic Mouth, you're casting it on an object. It's not like on a place. It's a specific object. But it doesn't say an object that doesn't already have a magic mouth. So you can put as many magic mouths on it as you want, which means that any given object can have any number of triggers and any number of outputs to those triggers.
Right. So you got yourself a chest.
Yes.
You got yourself a nice sturdy chest, and you're a bar owner, and you're like, and a bard. You own a bar and you are a bard, right? Because it has to be your voice coming out of it.
Right.
You cook yourself up a little jukebox here, don't you?
You do. Yeah. You what you can do is you can set it up so that this magic mouth triggers when it hears the sound of a coin enter a slot, and then you say the name of a song.
Right.
And so you can have, like, I mean, really, you just need one object. Like, it could just be the treasure chest itself if you wanted, and it would you'd be casting magic mouth a ton on it. But essentially, you'd then have this, coin slot, you say the name of a song, and then your treasure chest sings that song in your voice. So voice, probably going to be a bard. And
then eventually you get some enchanted items that play themselves, and baby, you got yourself a 1-box band going.
Yeah, I mean, so I think this would be a really cool thing to drop into a tavern, like you were kind of suggesting that this would be a good thing to have in a tavern. But I also think once this technology, I guess, is discovered and kind of sorted out, it's the kind of thing that like nobles are really going to want to collect, like their favorite songs on Pebble, I guess, like on whatever object you're infusing with this songs.
Yeah, an iBox.
Yeah. And you can imagine that not only are nobles buying and selling these things, but also probably like benevolent city benefactors are like buying these for a public space. And so there might be like the city fountain or something that you can go to, and you hear the kind of national anthem or whatever when you go there and request.
I'm thinking theme parks, like anywhere a speaker would be, essentially. So if you've got yourself a little D&D theme park where you're riding the flumps and you're eating the roasted newts, then as you're walking around you get little humming tunes from the rocks and trees and things.
There's a lot of applications just in terms of thinking of how this might impact entertainment and culture, but we're also like just barely scratching the surface right now. Libraries could maybe use these to create encyclopedias.
Yeah, a reference.
Right, like a book, and the book could even be blank.
Book on tape.
And you just ask the book, like, what do you know about rust monsters? And it gives you 25 words of what it knows about rust monsters.
Here's what I found.
Yeah. and this is gonna become more important later, but it's not, the spell says it's limited to 25 words, right? 25 words over 10 minutes.
Oh, you're right. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah.
Okay. So it says 25 words over 10 minutes, except there's no clause that says a magic mouth can't trigger another magic mouth. So if you have the triggering condition of a magic mouth be the 25 words said by the previous magic mouth, then you can
Just chain them.
Yeah, you can create these real. I mean, you can create audiobooks. Essentially, you can create like
an elaborate system of mouthing mouths.
Yes.
Oof.
Which is exactly what the next kind of idea is, right? That leads me to the next idea, which this is the one that's really, truly world changing. Like once someone figures this out, the whole setting changes.
Shifts.
Yeah, the whole setting shifts. You can create a telegraph system using magic mouths.
Right. Using the same when a mouth triggers a mouth.
Exactly. Using the same when a magic mouth triggers another magic mouth system. You create, I guess, like poles or something. And each pole is either a short blip or a long blip. Right. And so then then you just create every 30 feet, you put a new pole on the ground with the magic mouth. It's either the short blip or the long blip. And they have to be kind of parallel to each other so that messages,
within 30 feet.
Side note, if you need to do this cheaper or cover more ground, if you can find somebody who's a sorcerer and has magic mouth, which it's not on the sorcerer spell list, but maybe it's a multi-class or maybe it's a weird sorcerer that gets magic
ways
mouth
around this, Benjamin. I don't know if you're familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, but there's some pretty tricky things you can do.
But if you're a sorcerer, there is a meta magic option that lets you double the range of a spell, which in this case would put it to 60 feet. So you'd effectively have the number of posts you'd need to put out there. The other really important thing to remember that I actually forgot for most of my note taking is that magic mouth triggers on a condition that's either audio or visual.
Oh, that's right.
So if it triggered on audio only, it would be slower, right? Because sound doesn't move all that fast. But since it triggers on visual, as soon as the mouth appears, the next mouth can be triggered.
Man, that's just rapid suggestion.
So it's actually the speed of light. So it's instantaneous communication. Like it's faster. I guess it would be equally as fast as talking to somebody in the same room.
And really, you're talking about beeps like a telegraph, right?
Right. Yeah. Morse code. So
but if you really wanted to throw your full weight behind it, you just go down the dictionary.
That would be very expensive. That would be very expensive.
It's a lot of jade.
Yeah. That's a lot of jade.
A lot of jade. That's a lot of bees.
Maybe if you found a portal to the elemental plane of Earth.
Yeah.
And there was, and just had more jade, like you were just, the cost of jade had just completely collapsed in your setting and you needed to get rid of it to stabilize the cost of jade.
Lousy with jade.
Then you could do a whole dictionary and make a real telephone system, because we're talking about a telegraph system, not a telephone system. But if you cast it so much that you had every word in the dictionary,
on each pole,
you would functionally have a telephone.
Yeah, that's great.
And actually, earlier I said you'd have to have two parallel poles, but I don't know why I said that. You just have to have the one set of poles and cast Magic Mouth twice on each of them.
Yeah.
Okay. So think about what that does, right?
And it's the Industrial Revolution. Like it's the Old West. So gone are the Pony Express, and now
I mean, like it's beyond that, because it's essentially, it's very close to the internet. Like it's not as functional because it's Morse code and the person hearing it. I guess probably once you get familiar enough with Morse code, you basically you hear it and you can decode it like in your mind as it.
So Benjamin, I guess explain to me how the telegraph was like the internet. It's my first question.
So
when you say that.
So it's just, so I don't know enough about actual telegraphs to know how much different they are, but like this is instant. Like I said, it's the speed of light. Like you're just, as soon as a magic mouth appears, the next magic mouth can start triggering.
I'm pretty sure from my vast education of watching Deadwood, the telegraph, you get short messages and you paid by the line or by the word or something like that. So it's really just like memos.
This is, I mean, obviously any length of of message.
Yeah.
But then on top of that, it's not the speed of electricity. It's the speed of light, which is really super fast.
Yeah.
I mean,
think that the telegraph, the speed of electricity and the speed of light are negligible when it comes to how fast you're getting the message. But I understand what you mean. Like the fires of Gondor would never have to be used again. People with the spell sending. It really broadens your options for communication. And as we know, when that starts happening, progress just goes exponential.
I guess the most obvious reason you would produce this technology is in governance.
Mhm.
Like it makes building an empire
Easy.
suddenly a lot easier because it's not like write a message out, give it to a guy on a horse who rides like 200 miles to the next major city to deliver the message, which takes like multiple days. It's like you're like within minutes saying to whoever you've put in charge of the next city over, do this, do that, increase taxes.
And this combined with the speak with animals spell, and you got hawks patrolling your lines. Oh man. Geez.
Yeah, I hadn't.
You're taken care of.
Yeah. I mean, it does combine with other spells that allow strange things to happen because you can, for instance, if we were thinking about how it might combine with speak with animals, you could have animals trigger magic mouth,
right,
through the different things they do.
Mm-hmm. Your next point here, you're talking about some more, I guess you would say, fun in-game things,
right?
Like some silly hijinks that players can get up to.
Yeah. So this one is mostly for dungeon masters to use. I think player characters would have to spend a lot of time and a lot of money to make something like this happen.
They'd need a jade mine and they need an apiary.
Yes, they would need both of those things to finance this. Although pretty much all of these kind of large scale things, that's what you'd need to finance this. But the other idea is creating sonic weapon. Nothing in
the good stuff, baby. Yeah.
So nothing in Magic Mouth suggests that it can be used as a weapon. But I started thinking about how directed sound is used as a weapon, by the United States military, and I'm sure other militaries. And that got me thinking, like, would it be possible for that to happen?
Some particular bands that I could think of use sound as a weapon because their music's so bad. Get it?
Right. Very good.
Thank you.
Very good. The thing about something being a sonic weapon is that it primarily relies on decibels, on reaching a certain decibel threshold.
dBs.
Yeah. So
love them.
I did like very basic research into decibel levels and what decibel levels actually start causing physical harm to a person and all that. And so shouting is about 90 decibels. When a human shouts, they're reaching about 90.
When they let it all out. And these are the things that we do without. Sorry.
Fine. Anyway, there's the thaumaturgy cantrip, which, I don't like mixing and matching spells. I think it's worth talking about spells on their own. But the thaumaturgy spell specifically says it triples the volume of your voice.
Right. So if you're screaming.
Which is relevant to this because Magic Mouth repeats it how you said it, including at the volume that you said it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you cast thaumaturgy and triple the volume of your voice and then cast Magic Mouth, you've got this thing that's 3 times as loud as a voice. Now, I talked to people who are smarter than me about this.
Oh, you did?
Yes. And they said decibels don't work like that. Like, it's not just 3 times the sound of it's not just 90 times 3, which would be.
But at the same time, Benjamin, if you've got even like 2 or 3 of these on, say, a stone, you're still got 3 voices screaming at you at triple the volume, which is a little distracting.
Well, it's super distracting. But specifically, if you wanted to deafen someone, for instance, if you had like a dungeon that was where you had to walk very close to the walls to pass through it, and created a kind of row of magic mouths that just all triggered with your thaumaturgy triple max volume voice, you could deafen a person, I think, fairly easily, depending upon the acoustics and at how much decibels you're actually getting to. It would probably be a temporary deafen, not a permanent.
Sure.
But if you had enough time to really figure out the acoustics of the place you're doing this, and the volume, the cadence, like sound waves work in very weird ways where like they can diminish each other much more easily than they can enhance each other.
Sure.
So it would be really difficult, but you could, an enterprising wizard, I'm sure, could find a way to reliably deafen people, possibly even kill people. It's 180 decibels to 200 decibels is about what it would take to cause your lungs to start like messing up. And I don't know if collapsing is what happens, but well, people die at about that acoustic, at about that decibel level.
Got it.
So a wizard who was really interested in figuring that out.
Couple of natural 20 intelligence rolls.
Right. I mean, yeah.
You could do it.
Right.
You could crank up the volume to 11, baby.
So it's kind of like a House of Horrors type of like
these mouths just wide open, blasting you.
Right. That's not really the sort of thing I would expect a PC or any like humane government to create, but it's there if you are looking for a weird weapon for your quirky villain. We just talked about how a villain might use this. So I do want to go back to something small scale, but also something that the adventurers would use.
Yeah, you cooked up something kind of fun here.
Yeah. If you come into possession of a jade mine and an apiary,
just happen to the DM gifts you with these two things and then starts waggling their eyebrows like you know
or it's a novice DM and they just have not thought through the consequences of their actions and give you these two things. All you have to do is buy a bag of ball bearings, which in the player's handbook that costs 1 gold piece for 1,000 ball bearings.
Love it.
And it weighs 2 pounds. Right?
Yeah, seems simple enough.
So far. Simple so far. So you enchant every single ball bearing, all 1,000 of these, with a magic mouth that screams bang. You scream this at the top of your lungs, maybe with thaumaturgy, and you have it happen kind of repeatedly over the course of however long you want to stretch it out within the 10 minutes that you get to stretch out. It's 25 times over the course of 10 minutes. So
right.
So when a fight breaks out, you just throw those ball bearings everywhere and say the trigger word, and suddenly your opponent is surrounded by 1,000 intermittent screams
of bangs. Man, the easily startled's worst nightmare.
So even if you didn't own a jade mine or an apiary, this would cost 10,001 gold pieces.
Gotta remember the one.
Right. For the cost of all this honeycomb and jade. And it would take about 2 weeks of casting the spell nonstop as a ritual. Right. Like while you're awake, all you do is ritual cast
8 hours a day
to do this. Right.
It's real boring.
It would get real boring, but
fun. At the end of it, you get this.
I mean, until dispelled, and somebody would have to dispel each individual ball bearing, 1,000 ball bearing. Like you've got, I don't even know how I would react if somebody did this at my table.
Yeah.
Because
at the very least, you've got a creative magic item here that
unless a creature was expecting this to happen, I really feel like the stunned condition
at the very least
would be the only thing that makes sense, because like it would be you jump these guys in an alley, you think these are easy marks, and then all of a sudden there's like a flashbang going on constantly for 10 minutes.
Right.
You would have to remember to put in earplugs before you threw these out, or else you would be as borked as the bad guys.
All right, Benjamin. I think that you've convinced me that Magic Mouth is at least worth a DM to implement some pretty wild mechanics into the world. I don't know if you convinced me that it's a great spell for players themselves, but
I think the ball bearings case is a pretty convincing example of how player characters could use this if they have 10,001 spare GP.
Right. Well, I'd be very interested in hearing what our listeners what kind of crazy contraptions they could come up with. I'd also, we mentioned earlier the telegraph system, and you right here in your notes also something about maybe a computer system, if that was possible. We don't know how computers work. We're not going to talk about how computers work here, but if you could conceptualize a Magic Mouth computer, let us know on our Twitter, anywhere we can get a Magic Mouth message, I guess.
And where can we be found on Twitter, Dane?
We can be found at Dispel Magic on Twitter. And where can you be found, Benjamin?
At Sterling Berman.
And I'm at Dane in Danger.
Thanks for listening to Dispel Magic. We'll see you again after your next long rest.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Dispel Magic. If this has inspired any ideas for your game, or you have another take on today's topic, please let us know on Twitter at Dispel Magic Pod. You can find Benjamin at Sterling Vermin and Dane at Dane in Danger. Thank you to Slim Mittens for our cover art, produced by Benjamin Huffman, produced and edited by Dane Fox-McGraw.